Hello and welcome to Mythmakers. Mythmakers is the podcast for fantasy fans and fantasy creators, brought to you by the Oxford Centre for Fantasy. My name is Julia Golding, and today I am joined by the podcast's very good friend, Jacob, who is sitting over in Seattle, aren't you? Jacob Rennaker, sitting over in Seattle. We have the Atlantic between us and quite a few time zones, but we've managed to get together because we wanted to talk about three things, really. One thing is there has just been news on some of the casting decisions that are going on in this Andy Serkis directed film, The Hunt for Gollum. Then we also wanted to catch up with each other and with you about the possibility of this Stephen Colbert penned other Lord of the Rings film. And finally, because I'm launching into, again, publishing a fantasy book, and Jacob is also a writer, we thought we would just give you a few pointers about how you get from an idea to actually getting a book out there in the world. But we'll leave that at the end. So basically, we've got three things to talk about today. Anyway, welcome, Jacob. And shall we start with the casting news? How closely have you been following the news coming out of New Zealand on this film?
Somewhat. I haven't refreshed my browser every 5 minutes, as perhaps I should have. But generally speaking, I've got other fish to fry. But definitely with I think it became more on my radar after the surprise announcement of the Colbert film when Peter Jackson was giving his update on Hunt for Gollum, and I thought there was going to be a Hunt for Gollum update with the casting, perhaps, but then instead they provided something different. But here's the casting. Here's the Hunt for Gollum, more significant update that perhaps everyone thought was coming.
We have talked about this film before, and the challenges it has of being a prequel, with having to colour between certain lines and the lack of freedom about what they can do. And one of the clues that we get as people trying to sort of guess what's going to happen and what kind of film they're going for is to see what kind of people they are casting. Now, the original swathe was, we thought they were going to perhaps, because we knew that Ian McKellen was going back and we heard that Elijah Wood was going back. And for a while, Viggo Mortensen's name was attached to the project. Obviously, Andy Serkis is back playing Gollum, though as a CGI character, that's a completely different, set of criteria. But when Viggo dropped out, then there was a gap. And for a while, a actor called Leo Woodall was attached to that role. And it turns out that's wrong. They've actually announced quite a fascinating casting, which is Jamie Dornan. Now, if you only know Jamie Dornan as the tortured, worried, sexually sort of strange protagonist in the 50 Shades films, you are not doing him justice, because actually he's a brilliant Northern Irish actor. He was in the Kenneth Branagh film Belfast. He's been on in films and TV in the UK a lot. He is an actor of great range and seriousness, and he's also incredibly good looking. So delete from your mind, what's the name of that character? Christian Grey. There we go. Delete from your mind that, and now sort of think about him in his more Celtic Irish roots, which I think Viggo Mortensen drew so much on his own background as a sort of European mix. I think Jamie Dornan's got that sort of authenticity to him that he can bring to the role. So I actually think it's a really good casting, and I'm very excited to see what he might do with it. If I could put it like this, I think he has that potential lyrical soulfulness that actually made Viggo's performance so fascinating. The idea that this person could have lived a long time and knew all these stories, for a man, obviously. We're not judging by elves, we're judging by men. So I think that's I'm actually very happy. Did you, when we were talking before we started recording, you weren't really familiar with him, but do you feel a little reassured by what I've just said?
By what you've just told me, yeah.
Yeah.
I trust you. And so, yeah, for the performances, if it's, as long as somebody can capture like what Vigo I thought brought to the role wasn't like a swashbuckling Strider, but something that you said like was more soulful.
Yeah.
Somebody who can sing as well, right? That you could believe is like a gentle, like uh, a benevolent could be a benevolent ruler and not like a meaty action hero. So that's as long as you can keep that, like you said, like the kind of like a poetic lilt to those lines, those sparse lines. I think I'm willing to give him a chance.
Yes, if you want to sort of familiarize yourself with him, he does crop up on chat shows in the UK, like the Graham Norton show. So if you just look at how he presents himself there, you'll see that he's quite shy. I always felt that the Christian Grey role, he was really that was against the grain of where he was naturally. But he has played also some quite difficult villainous characters as well. So that's why I'm saying he's got range. So yes, tick. Jamie Dornan, interesting. Leo Waddle, I think that's his name. I don't know him so well, but I think he's been in things like the that Lotus Hotel series and all those kind of things. He's a young actor, very good, and he seems to be playing a character that is not canon, as it were, whose name begins with Halvard or something like that, which sounds as though he could be in some way a ranger. And thinking about it, you're not going to send Ian McKellen at his great age off into the wilds of location shooting because he just can't do it. That's one of the problems about him being interested in the role. So who is Aragorn going to talk to? I think it was Nerd of the Rings was speculating about it when I was checking what was happening at lunchtime. And they were taking it quite seriously about, oh, well, who is this person? And I was thinking, actually, he's there, surely there, just as the someone that Aragorn can talk to as a writerly thing. First and foremost, he needs a companion. And it's clear, unless you're going to give him a Legolas or someone to go with him, you need someone who could conceivably be accompanying him. And another ranger seems like an obvious choice because we know he has the Grey Company and all those people in the Lord of the Rings books, which never made it over to the film. So that's what I suspect is happening. Though, of course, the name is fairly generic, so it could be some other race of man in that time. We'll see. But I think if I was putting money on it, it would be somebody from the north, like a ranger. Yeah. Okay, so another casting, which I think you will be familiar with, Jacob. That's Kate Winslet,
right?
Who is playing a character called Marigold, which sounds hobbity, but we're in the time of, well, I'm not aware of there being a main female hobbit called Marigold. So I suppose we can speculate that maybe she is something like Gollum's, the sort of the matriarch of the Gollum's tribe of hobbit, proto hobbits, because his grandmother is mentioned and does get like her own little. Gandalf talks about her and actually mentions her when he's telling Gollum's story. So Kate Winslet, who is more or less my age, so she's not old. Obviously, I'm not old.
No, not
you know
old
what I mean?
at all.
I'm not
No.
old, but she's not a young.
Is becoming seasoned.
She's not a young lady anymore. She's becoming those sort of motherly parts.
Yeah, right.
So that seems as though, unless they're inventing another hobbit who in some way is going to be around in the sort of present day of this film, that doesn't seem plausible. I think she must be from some kind of backstory for Smeagol, Gollum. But what do you think about the idea of seeing Kate Winslet as a matriarch of the sort of Stour prequel?
I mean, it could. Yeah, I mean, why not? She has the acting job. She could make it convincing. She can make it compelling. We do have, I mean, so Marigold without a D. We do have a Marigold in Rings of Power. Marigold Brandifoot, who was one of the characters there. So, another proto Hobbit type character. So I don't know if that's even part of their consideration on the naming.
Okay. So I suppose the name doesn't tell us anything.
No.
Other than that Kate Winslet has sort of, fresh face, English complexion,
Right.
not obviously sort of elfin, if I can put it like that.
Right.
Not obviously sort of, you can imagine the sort of Kate Winslet, not the Kate Winslet, the Kate Blanchett types would lead you more into a elf direction. I think
Right.
most people have immediately gone to her being a hobbit, but I guess that name doesn't rule out her being some kind of
Something else. I mean, I
ranger
wish. I know
woman.
part of me was wishing that it would be that it could have been Aragorn's mother, because he needs somebody if you're going to show
But
this,
that's not her name, is it? She does
I
have
know,
a
no, it's
name.
not. No, exactly. So that's
Yeah.
how we know it's not going to be her. So, yeah. So it could have been. Yeah, I don't know. Is it a relationship with the new? Is it something in relation to this? Halvard, this new character.
Yeah, could
This
be.
perhaps. Who knows? But yeah, but certainly not. Yeah. So it's not going to be. That's not an elvish name.
No.
So well, I guess, yeah, I'm eager to find out what she'll do and how prominently she'll be, what kind of part she'll actually play in the film, because these, like, in terms of like the material that we have, there isn't a large female,
No.
prominent role in that part. So whatever they're doing here, it's a new character. How do they put her into that story? Get, like you were saying, coloring within the lines of what's there in the text, and being aware of what's been presented in the films, to then kind of walk that line, introducing a new character who can do something with the role, like Kate Winslet obviously will be able to do. I just hope they can do her justice by providing a role that allows her to do something meaningful in the story.
Yeah, and again, just to sort of emphasize, those of you who only last saw her in Titanic or something, she has gone on to do so many different roles, including war reporters, and she recently directed a film that came out at Christmas, Goodbye June, with Helen Mirren, where she was playing an older, sort of a grown-up daughter to somebody dying of cancer. So she's got, again, the breadth and the range that one would hope. So she can do anything, basically. And I agree
She
with you.
can.
Let's hope whatever part she's given, be it Hobbit type thing or some kind of human, let it be significant.
Yeah. I will say that I have, so like my most recent kind of exposure to her is her audiobook narration of the Enchanted Wood children's series. She did the Faraway Tree audiobook that my child listens to sometimes. So she can do, so I know that she can do, if it is kind of a more hobbity
Yeah,
thematic role, that she can. I've heard her be able to do that, and do it well. She has that kind of whimsy, can have that kind of like magical, whimsical, wondrous lilt to her voice. So I think she could, if it is even that kind of a role, I think that she would be able to do well based on what I've heard her do.
Yeah, and of course, there's just a practical thing about which British actors are left over who haven't been cast in Harry Potter. So because they don't want to cross streams of the franchises.
Right.
Yeah, that's important. Okay, so moving on, then we got news about people returning. So Lee Pace was the new announcement. Now Lee Pace, most people listening to this will remember as Thranduil in The Hobbit, and he was definitely one of the best castings. Him and Martin Freeman were brilliant in that. I think the problems were all to do with the script, really, rather than the castings. I also liked Richard Armitage as well. So the casting was strong in that thing. It's just the way it was divided up, which it was weird, and that's charitable. So Lee Pace, with his awful arrogance in that, was rather good. So him coming back to swish his robes again, I think is exciting, but also I think he will be fine, because that's what, 10, 13 years ago that he did that. I think because he was already a mature elf, he won't have aged out. Whereas poor old Orlando Bloom, if he did come back in any way as Legolas, he would find it very difficult to be de-aged, just because his body will no longer move of course it doesn't, like a 20-year-old. So I think Lee will be fine. So That seems good. Elijah Wood coming back. He did look a bit ancient, even with all the de-aging technology in The Hobbit. So I'm not sure how he's going to be featured, possibly as a voiceover introduction of the Red Book, kind of brief glimpse. I can't imagine he will have a larger role than bookending it. And then Ian McKellen. I am worried about Ian McKellen because in The Hunt for Gollum, Gandalf does stand to play a big part. He's part of the search. And lovely Ian McKellen is in his 80s, and he has had a number of health events. He can't ride a horse or. So I'm hoping, a bit like they had to with Christopher Lee, I'm hoping they're going to work a way of letting him act without overstressing him. I know he wants to keep hold of the part. Should let go, Ian. That's my personal view, but I know a lot of people really want him to come back. But anyway, if he's coming back, don't overstress him. And then, of course, finally, Andy Serkis is going to be Gollum as well. That's going to be. Don't you think that's a really interesting? Well, people have done it before, but how is he going to direct and act when it's the hunt for Gollum? How's he going to do that? It's going to be really hard.
Yeah. Yep. No, agreed. And I don't know that the difficulties, the added level of complexity with the motion capture, that he's going to be, because he's there. I'm sure he'll be there in the scenes with folks, but he'll be. I think the actors will already be having to suspend their disbelief looking at a man in a spandex suit with the dots on them, and using their imagination. So I don't. Yeah, and that's a good question in terms of like the logistics of directorial responsibilities in scenes. That it's largely set up from what I've seen and understand, that it's setting up a scene beforehand, going through, and then afterwards, like directors do, rather than like stopping people cutting mid scene, which you could do, but it is different. It's the same thing like with you saw more of this a few decades ago with basketball, with American basketball, that they had a few player coaches. So somebody who was playing in the game, right, but who was also coaching, didn't really last. There was just like a spot where people tried doing that, but they found it was strategically and emotionally better for all those involved to have the director who's just kind of doing their role of the maestro, if you will, of kind of like orchestrating all the different parts rather than being in it, because that's completely different, because emotionally you have to be invested in the scene for it to be convincing and get responses from your fellow actors. So it is a level of complication. But
I think that he did actually do this, if I remember from the making of, he did do this on The Hobbit for that scene, the best scene in the whole thing, when he does the riddles. I've got a feeling he was the director of the second unit and did that.
Gotcha.
So I've got in my mind that there is a bit where you can go and look what he does on the extras, showing how he does it. And of course, as you say, because it's a mocap type thing, that I presume he could have a double sort of when he's doing coverage for other he could have someone else doing that, and he can be but it's not actually on him. Anyway, let's see. It's Andy, you've taken on a lot. Okay, so that was sufficiently joyful to find out that all that was happening. But we also heard a couple of weeks ago now that this did take me by surprise, that Stephen Colbert, who is best known for being a late night chat show host, but he's also a very funny man, and he's got a personality that goes beyond his show. But he is also known, of course, of being one of the uber fans of Tolkien, and he had a rather sort of prominent cameo role in that he didn't blend with the rest of the film in The Hobbit, but he clearly loves anything to do with the whole Peter Jackson setup. Anyway, and he's been cancelled or whatever. His show's been cancelled, so everyone knew that he was going to do something else, but nobody knew what. And then Peter Jackson announced with him that he is writing. Well, if I've been calling it like this, if The Hunt for Gollum is a prequel, then this is an interval because it fits in between the party and the hobbits arriving and leaving, starting to leave. A hobbit sort of party getting together of Merry, Pippin, Sam and Frodo, and arriving in Bree. It's an interval there. And there is mutterings, rumours about them doing a trilogy. So that would mean we've got prequel, interval, and maybe a sequel.
Right.
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking would be quite a nice pattern. But what do you think about well, let's start with the material first and then talk about the people involved. What do you think about this idea of filling in the bit? So that's the early chapters of Lord of the Rings, where they're not going to redo, Gandalf talking to Frodo and all that stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to conceivably can pick up with, I don't know, Farmer Maggot, because he was not really covered, the Old Forest, Old Man Willow, Tom Bombadil, Goldberry, Barrow Downs, Barrow Whites,
mm-hmm.
and then presumably stop as they reach Bree. What do you think about that as material for a film?
If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Because as your life changes and your body changes, Sleep Number mattresses adapt and shift to give you personalized comfort night after night. And now it's the final days of our Everything's on Sale event. Save up to $1,200 on mattresses. Our Memorial Day event ends Monday. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
Yeah, that was good. And it was interesting, when Colbert announced it, he, talked about those chapters, how he said when he loves the film, loves the films, and was looking, and also loves the books. And that he was looking at those chapters that they skipped, that he kept coming back to them and said, like, is there enough here for a story? Because he felt that there was. And so I did the same thing, immediately went and, revisited those. And I think it could work. I think there's enough there to provide an arc for the characters and for Frodo's in particular. There's a line at the very end or at the very end of those set of chapters when Frodo is captive by the Barrow Wight. And it says, there's like a seed of courage that exists in all hobbits, and sometimes it just takes a desperate circumstance, to be able to awaken that. And then he does, ultimately does, and saves his friends. Where as at the beginning, he's very reluctant, hesitant to leave. He's always questioning, should I have, did I leave? Am I doing the right thing? Should I have left? Did I leave the wrong way? Now, did I actually make things worse by leaving? Because my friends know about the ring, does that mean everybody else knows about the ring? There's the Black Riders. And so you have this kind of like fearful Frodo, who in that moment, I think you really see him first really kind of summon his courage. So this is kind of the awakening of Frodo, the hero. I think you can see, I think this could be a good way to represent that kind of transition of character, because he does, well, in the films, he can be hesitant and question and defer to others. He is fairly brave, it seems like, for a hobbit who's out of their depth. Certainly more so than Merry and Pippin at the beginning, and even Sam. So in my mind, so these stories that you're doing kind of like prequel. Well, it's not prequel, but if it's a movie that's kind of being inserted into a beloved.
That's why I called it an interval.
Franchise. Right. Yeah. So we've seen it before, and I think you can do it well. It's done. I think it serves the story if it adds something. It adds a dimension or a layer to a character that then, if you rewatch the original, then you think like, oh, okay, I can appreciate this character more. If there's something that like enriches your understanding and kind of experience of that character, then it's there. And I think they're able to do that. Like with Star Wars has done it to varying degrees of success, and I think mostly with the Rogue One, kind of like more of a standalone, disconnected, the Andor series, where it's adding some more depth that now kind of going back and watching stories, seeing characters, you understand, oh, there's this motivation to the character, and it enriches rewatching the original. So I think that within this arc, you do see Frodo kind of moving and changing. At least Tolkien himself signifies this kind of this switch, this slight change in Frodo at that moment in the Barrow when he's captured by the Barrow Wight. So I think within the arc with the Tom Bombadil, with the Old Forest, with Tom Bombadil, the Barrow Wights, I think there's enough there to have like a nice self-contained story without having to, like we saw with The Hobbit. The problem with The Hobbit is it was stretched too thin into 3 films from the material, but the material that we have here, I think there's enough to be able to provide a nice to dig into some of those moments. But the trick is, and I would love to hear this, your thoughts on this, on how that fits in with the existing films. What you think the best way is to do that?
So that's going to be a real challenge, isn't it? So first of all, the choices they took simplified some of the characters. So one of the things I was finding when I've been doing this series, reading my way through it, sort of sidecast I'm calling it,
right?
Remember looking at those and thinking, oh yeah, Tolkien really did think about the different roles of the hobbits within that little walking party. And Merry in particular is not just the naughty sidekick character. He is more like, I think I would call him a quartermaster. He provides the ponies and he negotiates on their behalf. He's the one who goes ahead and prepares the way, sets things out. He's the one who knows about the road through the Old Forest. So he's not just Pippin's chum. And of course, Pippin as a Took has his own sort of background, but we got the idea of it'd be lovely to see Merry as a Brandybuck, because the Brandybucks and which he will eventually become, head of that branch of the family. And they've got a very different culture, and that would be fun to see. But it would mean shifting Merry slightly. I think you see later in the trilogy that he is a more serious character of the two. He is the one, for example, who is suspicious of Strider early on, if you remember. And then, of course, he has that sort of seriousness of purpose, which Pippin is later to find when he reaches Gondor. So that would be, so there's a slight retuning. I think you can just about get away with it. But if in terms of where Merry is, he's I think if you're going to have the 4 of them, you want more nuance between who they all are. And the book provides the nuance. And Frodo, by casting Elijah Wood so young, they got rid of this. But Frodo is the young officer who is sent over the top with his men. That's who he is. And it would be interesting to see if they lean more into that, the fact that Frodo does have some sort of command. And that's what you see. He takes responsibility and command. So I think that's interesting, but I feel it's a bit thin. I know why they're doing it. I would be interested to see how they connect it to the outer frame, because apparently it's Sam's daughter who's like the sort of who is in the appendices. That she holds the books, and so she's like the next generation of the story. That's where I would put the sequel if I was going to do it.
Right. Yeah, and that seems, and I've seen that's what they did with Star Wars with The Force Awakens as kind of the passing of the baton. So they had the original characters in, and then this new crop that they were presumably kind of like rolling off the franchise onto the shoulders of. So this could be a way, if they're introducing that character and having her as kind of part of the framing story, if they wanted
she's Eleanor, isn't she? She's Eleanor, I think. Is that the right name?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's named after the flower that they see in Lorien. So, yes, and I think she's the one who becomes she's also bright lady in waiting to Arwen and things. So I'm quite excited about her. I think she sounds really interesting. But it is frankly thin. and the stakes are quite hard to persuade you. I know that the sort of strap line is the Fellowship almost failed before it began. You'll have to work hard, I think, to
convince
make that stake, because you don't have the sort of the sexy characters like Aragorn and Legolas and Boromir, all that sort of the men around. You've got laughing, chuckling Tom Bombadil.
And Goldberry, right? So we have two. So now, whereas it was all male, so we have within the material, the source material itself, there's one female, and that's Goldberry, who comes in and is just kind of weaves her way within the story to provide some
quite a Galadriel style presence, really. She's
exactly,
trial run at Galadriel,
like a proto Galadriel, as you're coming in there. So kind of like mystical, mysterious, happy, but kind of like an untouchable character, not one that they're like really feel that they can approach, but that they're approaching with like awe and trepidation, because she seems to be this elemental force, much like an elf, but I think like even heightened in the text itself. It's really, she is a force of nature that's kind of embodied or anthropomorphized. And so I think, but having Eleanor as their female, so when you're talking about audience, it'll be hard to have there isn't going to be love interest. You don't have like an art, like the change that they made with the film with having Arwen inserted earlier, taking some slightly different roles to make her a more prominent role in the film, to ideally connect more perhaps with certain audiences. So this one's going to be a very male centered film, unless they're able to, with the frame story with Eleanor, if she's actively kind of they're intercutting her throughout this as she's kind of discovering and learning more information about what happened. What I'm interested to see is how they explain within the scope of the film why this didn't make it into the story that everyone knows, which is presumably, the films that we saw them. So it's like, well, what was about this whole, there was an entire character, like elemental force, perhaps the oldest being that existed on Middle Earth, and you just didn't mention that in your story to us. Almost the Barrow Wights, these terrible like forces of evil that nearly killed all of your friends, and you forgot to mention that to us. So I'm eager to hear like how they explain that within the film. She does have, like you said, she is given the Red Book, so she has that information. And I don't know if she's saying like, well, this is perhaps the author, who's been writing Bilbo and Frodo in this, perhaps they've been unreliable narrators, and then she's going to the different areas and trying to tease out, okay,
that'd be great.
What didn't they tell us here? And she's seeing different things, like especially with like the Barrow blades, the Barrow Wight blades that they receive in the books. That's where they receive their swords that are really daggers, right? Tom Bombadil gives them from the Barrow Wight's treasure, and that's how they're armed. Whereas in the films, Aragorn is the one
he just
arms
them.
Has some extra swords, because why not? He's well prepared. He's a monarch in waiting.
I think they may have to abandon the idea of completely dovetailing.
Yeah, exactly. So
otherwise, it's going to be such a straitjacket.
No, it will be, and especially with the farmer. You mentioned Farmer Maggot, so I went and rewatched the little section of the film.
There is a sort of Farmer Maggot, isn't there?
They mentioned, so they mentioned Farmer Maggot, like that's who they say they're running away from when they run into them in the cornfields. They say, so you see the scythe kind of bobbing up and down there. I'm interested to hear from you, Julia. So I think the biggest character here that is going to play a part in this, and will probably clearly is going to be central to the plot, is Tom Bombadil.
Oh yeah.
So your thoughts on how to handle this? I'd love to hear, how Tom Bombadil has been handled. We've reviewed, Rings of Power season 2 was kind of our first like on screen. We have audio adaptations like with Andy Serkis, with his narration of Fellowship of the Ring. We have a American National Public Radio adaptation that does include Tom Bombadil, but the BBC 1981 radio adaptation skipped over that part, that whole section there. So what are you expecting? What do you hope? What do you fear with Tom Bombadil? What would you like to see, especially with your close rereading that you've been doing? What do you think? How do you think they can serve Tom Bombadil here in a way that he hasn't been served elsewhere?
Okay, so the reason why. So the book version of Tom Bombadil comes across as like a nursery time figure because he was a nursery character and we're still with Tolkien at the moment when he's still thinking of it as the new Hobbit. And they had this little figurine in the nursery, and it was incorporating a child's toy in the story and then sort of doing the Tolkien thing of, oh, well, it's actually going to be this, it's much bigger than that, of course. And that origin is kind of dropped away. So, but one of the vestiges of that sort of younger, sort of more nursery thing is the way he talks, the ho-hum Tom Bombadil songs. I think the way to handle it is, why not just go with Rory Kinnear, who's doing a fabulous job in the Rings of Power version of Tom Bombadil. He seems to have the right energy for this character. So someone, if not him, well, why not him? But also, I think about that, not think of it as more like a folk singer. Some really great folk singer because a lot of medieval folk songs have the refrain like that. And actually, I think you'd have to cast someone who's got a really good baritone or bass voice who could really carry it off without it sounding odd or funny. Because it's cheerful, but it's not. You're not laughing at him. It's a joke that you share like a babbling brook. That's the idea. The spirit is that kind of infectious laughter that you get with, the best people. And it's a tall order, but I think you can do it if you've got someone who's musically sensitive. I don't know if Rory Kinnear is. Maybe he might think, oh, no, that's not me. But somebody who's got the acting chops of him, but also is able to sing. I mean, I suppose... somebody who's actually trained in singing would be good. I'm just thinking of Hugh Jackman. Someone like that who can really carry a tune would be good. But you need not necessarily him, but somebody who could not be embarrassed about moving between speech and song, because I think that's the key thing about that character. And it can really fail. It's hard to dub as well in other languages, right? So we'll see. But I think he's actually, to be honest, I think he's easier in a way than Goldberry, because Goldberry is described in very similar language to Galadriel, and she stands and poses in a very similar way to Galadriel. It is like a sort of, as though he's playing with these ideas and then says, oh, right, let's do it properly. I think you'd have to lean into the idea of her being a sort of river goddess, probably a bit more CGI, a bit more sort of idea that she's like made almost of water, elemental creature. Give her something where she doesn't feel like Kate Blanchett, but not. But she's kind, and she has an element of nurturing to her as well, as does Tom. I think that's what I would kind of emphasize, is they're both really loving characters and a happy marriage.
Right. And the language that they use there in the book is really interesting. It says like that they are like, that they're different. Like Tom is this kind of like boisterous and kind of jovial. She's happy and nurturing and caring. And it says that they're kind of like weaving their way around each other in this kind of dance. So the way that they describe their relationship, that they seem like total opposites, but that they're together somehow able to work in concert with one another. Which is kind of evoking with Tom in general. It's really, I feel, strong resonances with the Ainulindalë in the Silmarillion, where existence begins with song. So, and it's not just, and even when Melkor is introducing this harmony, the other Ainur and the creation is able to kind of harmonize, play off of that discord to create something that's even more beautiful. And so the emphasis that I keep seeing here on singing, and then like when the hobbits then say that it feels, Frodo starts kind of singing and kind of stops himself and is like, I didn't, and he says that they found it easier to sing at times than to talk. So like you said, it's infectious. It's just something, there's this kind of like elemental, they're tapping into something that's elemental that Tolkien is seeing as fundamental to creation itself, which is song. And Tom Bombadil is kind of the embodiment of that in a way in the natural world, which is fascinating. But and I think, yeah, like you were saying, like with the voice, if you treat it like a folk singer, I think like that's a really good approach. So I went and did, you know, a deep dive on all of the different like interpretations of Tom Bombadil in all of these different forms. So listening to how the American version did it in 1979, it was kind of a goofy, silly character, some singing, but not all the time. And then Rob Inglis had singing, you know, had Tom Bombadil sing when it explicitly in the text said that he was singing. But Andy Serkis, what he does, which is fascinating, is he picked up on Tolkien's like the lyricism. So when Tom Bombadil speaks, he speaks in meter.
Yeah, it's still there.
And so Andy Serkis recognizes the meter that's there, even though it doesn't say that it doesn't explicitly say he sang this, but Andy Serkis recognizes the meter and he continues to sing. So the majority of Tom Bombadil's lines are sung in the Andy Serkis adaptation, which I thought was fascinating and more, you know, did justice to the text. And as I imagined, Tolkien was imagining it and kind of hearing it himself. What I saw in the Rings of Power season 2 was the character was a more subdued character.
He's more like Bjorn, actually, isn't he? I felt that he felt a bit similar to the Bjorn character in The Hobbit.
Yeah. And I think so. We saw like he was more, like a more subdued, as if like, that he then the hard trajectory is usually you're jolly and then you become jaded. Whereas in Rings of Power, he's kind of like jaded, subdued character who then all of a sudden is going to become like happy-go-lucky after all these like his trauma that he's gone through. So I think that Andy Serkis gives a very kind of like a boisterous, the energy with which Andy Serkis provided, I think was interesting. With the Rob Inglis, it was kind of a more constant. It was like a happy and joyful, but it was more. It was a more measured, as opposed to kind of like a little bit more unbounded in Andy Serkis's. So I'd be interested to see how they take this character and, like you were saying, with kind of as Goldberry as the foil for that, and without making it seem like outlandish and just silly, because nobody wants that.
One thing we do know with the Stephen Colbert script is it's going to be extremely respectful of the source. Okay. He's doing it with his son, who I think it's got a different surname, Peter McGee or something like that, who is a scriptwriter. I don't know what you think about sort of nepotism, but clearly they'll have a close working relationship there on this. Right. But the other thing that I think bodes well for what we've just been talking about is Stephen Colbert and his wife Evie clearly have a very Tom Bombadil Goldberry marriage. They're clearly very happily married, and she often appears on his show, and so I'd quite like to see a bit of her input. You know, they are writing it with Philippa Boyens, of course, and PJ and all the rest of them, and Fran. So I'm sure it will blend, but yeah, it's definitely making something with the trimmings from the pastry.
Yeah. And one other thing I was thinking of, like the things that we've seen elsewhere, so this material that we've seen has been mined elsewhere, even in the Peter Jackson films, right?
Yeah,
so when Pippin and Merry go to Fanghorn Forest, they're kind of attacked by the tree.
It's
and
only
and
an extended edition, though.
Okay, yeah, right. So if you saw it in the theater, you're out of luck. But yeah, so some of this material has been so that the whole episode there where the forest is kind of attacking. That kind of has been mine a little bit in Rings of Power. That was one of the things that I felt was done. I don't want to say disrespectfully, but just like it seemed like they're pulling out. So you have the stranger who's revealed to be Gandalf.
Oh, the Barrow-wights presumably are in there, aren't they?
Barrow-wights also, yeah. So the same, yeah. So again, like the same episode. It's even on the same episode. It's episode 4 of season 2, where Gandalf is trapped by this it's old man Ironwood. So they just changed that off, and then even the same lines where he's saying, when Gandalf's trying to ask him who he is, his responses are the same as as Tom Bombadil's response to Frodo when he's asking, "Who am I?" And even the singing, and so it just seemed like they were just kind of like lifting the ports, copy, insert,
paste.
find and replace. Yeah, find and replace this, put in some other generic names, and put in the same situation, rather than taking the spirit of that and seeing how it would happen and organically kind of unfold. And there, I felt like it was trying to steer too close to that. So the same episode, they have Tom Bombadil and that kind of a tree attacking our heroic character. You also have the Barrow Wights in a separate, separate story, separate plot, with Galadriel and Elrond, and and that's kind of more of an actiony fighting the Barrow Wights. I didn't find that one as objectionable because they were taking this concept of Barrow Wight and then just like having those as an obstacle, and wasn't really a plot. It advanced the plot insofar as the characters are coming together, and this group that wasn't really coherent now is kind of having to fight together. So okay, it served its purpose here, but taking the Tom Bombadil material from his character and his character development and just kind of like wholesale lifting it out of there and plopping it into another setting without changing it or finessing it much, that was something that I thought could have been handled differently. But
of course, this team don't have to worry about what Rings of Power are up to,
right? No, or do they? Well, I'm sure that'll be that voice. I'm sure Stephen Colbert has seen Rings of Power season 2, guarantee it, right? So I'm sure that's a voice in his mind.
I see, yeah.
So as they're doing that, I'm sure they're saying that Tom Bombadil has been portrayed recently. If it was like something from, if it was the Rankin Bass animated adaptation, then if that was the only thing, then it would be a problem. But so recently, we've had a Tom Bombadil live action adaptation within the past 2 years when this is being developed. So I'm sure that is playing, that's something that they're kind of triangulating around. Like, how are they responding to it? Because it exists already in their mind. So they have to decide, okay, do we want to lean into that character choice, or do we want to go a completely different direction? And so it has to be reactionary by virtue of the fact that it does exist in the world, and it's something that the people that are involved likely have seen.
And also, they probably will have to do a more diverse casting process. So you might actually go for a very different type for Tom Bombadil.
Right. Well, Tom Bombadil, his hands are described as brown. Now you can, when they're describing him, so he doesn't say like exactly how he's looking, but he has red hair and whatnot, but that he's darker complexion, and so. There is, just like with Harry Potter with the casting, right? I think there's enough leeway in the text that you can work with it a bit. Yeah. So I would hope that they would do that, because they're stuck. Yeah. They're stuck with the hobbits with the characters that they have. They can't recast. I don't think it would be difficult to then put in somebody of a completely different ethnicity as, say, like Pippin.
If they're trying to make it feel as though it's seamless with the rest of the story.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. They can obviously play around with having a more diverse Hobbit cast. Why not? I think they should. They probably already started doing that in The Hobbit. I didn't really notice, but they certainly did that with Lake Town and places like that. Okay, so that's as far as we can really get on that at the moment. Other than I think it's really interesting. And good luck to them all. I'm sure they have, of course, they have thought through all these kind of things we've been talking about, but Stephen Colbert feels he's got a line through this. And I want him to surprise me and actually think, so that I can say, oh, that's brilliant, Stephen. Well done. You really did knock that one out of the park. That'd be great.
Well, and this is something that I saw like in another interview that he did, was his inspiration for doing this. So some people might, like you're saying, like I would love to be pleasantly surprised, and I'm prepared to be pleasantly surprised. Because he said one of his inspirations for going to like screenwriting route was Bill Hader. Bill Hader was in Saturday Night Live, a comedian who then, after finishing Saturday Night Live for several years, a very successful run, he took a year and joined the writing team on South Park. So he just like didn't want to go to another like acting gig that a lot of people after Saturday Night Live or comedy shows, they would find the next big thing in the spotlight. He took time out. He just joined a writing room for an animated cartoon for adults. Did that for a year, and then based on that, then he started writing his own material, and he developed this incredible dark comedy Barry that won several awards, around for like 4 seasons on HBO. It's a dark comedy that has some like serious like drama, has some like it's really really good. And so Stephen Colbert said he was inspired by Bill taking time off from being in front of the camera to then work on storytelling, and what that did for him. And he said that was really kind of what inspired him to kind of look for that route, as he knew that his runway was ending with the Late Show, that he wanted to then, what do I want to do? Get into writing. And luckily he called his show being canceled a eucatastrophe, is the specific word that he uses
that, yes.
in right. So clearly this is somebody who knows Tolkien, not just like his, the fiction works, but also his nonfiction, his scholarly works, right? On it's scholarship on fairy. So I do definitely see this as something that he's now able to, and I'm grateful that he's able to kind of pivot into something, his passion, that maybe he can use his success, the resources, the connections that he's made to then now try to do something different and to contribute. He says he feels like there's something that he can contribute to this because of where he's positioned, because he loves the material so much. He wants to make sure that it's done right.
And
he wants to do it justice.
Yeah, and what's a lovely thing to look forward to, because when the world feels bleak, I like looking forward to projects like this where I can think, oh, well, that's coming in, 2027, and then
2
that's
years,
coming.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, it's nice to have that. I think 2027 is the Hunt for Gollum, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
And then I presume this one is a couple of years further on from that. Very sane on the part of Stephen Colbert. So just to wrap up, we were going to also have a think about, for the many people listening who are interested in being writers like Stephen Colbert, but perhaps writing fantasy novels. And I know this is an area, Jacob, that you'd love to break into.
Right.
And I've just sort of got a new contract to write a new children's book which has a foot in the fantasy market. I thought it might be a good idea just have a touch base about what's happening now in publishing in that area, and we'll sort of keep dipping back in as I go through this year until publication. So what have you been thinking about it all?
Tell me. So with the changing face of all these different things, so clearly there's a demand for it, right? With Impossible Creatures being optioned by Disney, them kind of seeing that as their kind of Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts series. So this is something that places are looking to find new voices, to find exciting stories that they can then turn into intellectual property, to state it craftily. They're looking for good stories.
Yeah,
they can exploit that people will resonate with people, and that can help to help sprout different media of different sorts. So
Impossible Creatures is actually an interesting example, because that's by Catherine Rendell, who I know a bit. I was I reviewed one of her very early books and went to dinner with her. She has a role at All Souls, which is like this completely bizarre Oxford College with no students. It's just right by the Bodleian. It is like something from a fantasy, Philip Pullman or something. I have read some of her other work, but she's known as a very literary writer.
Right. Yeah.
She's also done a well-regarded biography of John Donne, for example. So she's got this sort of academic side to her. So I haven't read Impossible Creatures, but I know, as you say, it's been optioned by Disney. I'm not aware of it having been a runaway bestseller here. So it's interesting that a property like that, which doesn't have a big following, not like the How to Train Your Dragons, has been picked up. So that tells me I must go away and read it and see what's going on there.
It is, yeah, and this is I think what I'd love to hear, like as you're approaching this. So clearly, like, money's been put. So Barnes and Noble here in America picked it as one of their book of the year, for young readers. They have different editions, like printed, on the spine. They have like a Griffin edition. There's different editions you can get. My child got stickers. They have a sheet of stickers for kids of all the different mythical creatures. They're on the back of his high chair. So they came up with, there's clearly a lot of marketing money that was put behind it from the get-go, to position this as a book that they wanted to be successful. So part of it probably is due to the publisher's decision to put, to go all in on, to put extra marketing funds to promote this book. So as you're looking with your project, So as you're approaching publishers in the first place, did the marketing and positioning of the story that you wrote, did that play any role as you were developing like the idea and writing it?
So obviously I'm in a different position for somebody who's a debut, because I'm having conversations already with people at parties and, that stuff, the networking stuff. So how this particular one came about was I was having a conversation with some people at my agent's retirement party asking, what are you looking for? What do you want? And this concept came up, which I thought, oh yeah, that is a good area to be writing in. So it was just a couple of lines about the kind of area they were looking for. And if you can see what publishers are looking for, look at wider culture and think, okay, so what's really hot at the moment? What's really, if it's a massive year for football, for example, there's bound to be football books. If it's a massive year for space, there's going to be people writing about children going to space. Is this that simple? And I then developed something out of that. Funnily enough, I did actually go. The person I had the conversation with didn't pick up my email, so I ended up just sending it to my agent once I'd written it, and then she went out to the market with it, and I ended up with 3 publishers interested. It all happened super quickly. So I had a new agent who'd taken over from the retired agent who came in wanting to prove herself. That helps. I'd been away from writing for children for a bit because I've been writing for adults. So I haven't sort of been going out a lot recently to the same people. That helped. And the concept everybody could see before they even read it. They thought, oh yeah, the what they call the elevator pitch. Yes. Right. This seems timely. I will share what that pitch is later once we've sort of got a bit further. You don't want to be pitched post by somebody else doing it,
right.
And so I haven't had a sort of 3-way competition for a book ever, I don't think. Okay. I've had rumbles of interest around titles, but then I've got into relationships with a particular publisher and stuck with them, and so it's not been that. And that was very exciting because it sort of tests the idea, the theory of the case. So we've got Usborne, who are a specialist children's publisher in the UK, who are publishing here, but it's going out around now to overseas publishers, hoping it'll be picked up for translation. And where, as looking at it from a sort of marketing point of view, where you as an author want to make money is getting it picked up for being translated into other languages.
Right.
That's where you make money initially. And if you get a film deal, well, that's a different thing. But for the ordinary author, so if you're thinking of a pitch for your own story, it's good to have an eye on what the rest of the world is up to. Would this sell in Germany? Would this sell in Australia or Japan or whatever it is? You can't, obviously, sometimes something that seems quite parochial, like Harry Potter, is very English. That actually is part of its selling point. So it doesn't, being local doesn't matter. It just, I suppose, means is the world sharing this cultural moment, ready for a wizard or an impossible creature or whatever it is? Is the world, so that's what's going on there. So I would say if you're sitting out there thinking, I really, really want to get published, and I'm listening to Julia talking about having a good idea, I'm going to go and share. I've got lots of good ideas. I'm going to go and ask a publisher if my good idea is worth writing. No. Stop. What you've got to do is you've got to sit down and write it. So after my conversation with somebody where I thought, oh, I know exactly what I can do there, I've got a really good idea to fill this slot, I spent November and December writing it. And by the way, middle grade books have got a bit shorter than when I last did one.
Yeah. So what's the word count on yours?
They used
or in the general range?
Well, it's just under 60K. It's about 59K. That's a bit long. We may even try and trim it down, but it's quite hard because of the plot to trim it down. But when I first started out, 60K was like a minimum. It used to be in the contracts at least 60K. And adult books would be at least sort of, 90, and YA books would be in the sort of 70 to 80,000 words. But modern children, the way it's going to be presented will be easier to read, more white space, more illustrations. This is all to do with the modern child and the sort of visual culture they're moving in. So don't write long. If you've got a children's book out there and it's 100,000 words, wow, no, really don't bother. Someone is going to fall at the first fence for a middle grade. Of course, there are big fantasy epics that get to that point, but that's for an older age range, adults and upper end of YA fiction. And then, so you go in with your full manuscript and then you start in this process with the edit. And what's happened in this case is that the contract negotiation happens with, in my case, an agent and the publisher. That kind of happens out of your hands. You just sort of hear words coming back and you get going on what you're going to do next. And
before that, Julia, did the new agent that was taking over for the other agent? I know that in the process that typically you'll get notes from your agent, like you get this manuscript to your agent. They'll send notes on your new, so you're an established writer, and you've been with an agent, but then you have a new agent. Did you receive notes before this new agent went out? Did they give you any notes on the manuscript before then they took it out that you had to address?
Yes, my previous agent would occasionally as well, particularly if we were going out to market with something new like this. And my new agent is called Molly Kerr-Horn, who happens to be American. She's wonderful. And so she gave me a round of comments in early Jan. I always deal with things very quickly because that's just the kind of way I am. And so I sent it back to her a week or so later. And then she went out to market and we got the contract in Feb. So that's quick for publishing.
Okay.
And it's because this has a particular timeliness to it. Normally things are on a sort of 2-year schedule, whereas this is it will be out in January. So it's on the fast.
This coming January.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is
quicker than Andy Serkis. But less moving parts in a book.
Yeah.
So
that was revised. So you'd already done some revisions before then. Your new agent took it out, and then with the bidding between 3 different publishers.
I would say to aspiring authors, don't be an author if you don't like reacting to other people's edits and notes. Yeah. I actually love it because I regard it as I've presented something that it's only got my wisdom in it. Mm-hmm. And there is a wisdom that other people can see it more plainly. It's the same with, I've just dealt with the first round of editorial notes and sent it back. So I'm in second draft officially now. And
from the editor, from your publishers.
From the publisher.
So you've got it to the publisher, they've looked it over. And so then the editor at Usborne that you had, they have notes on it. And so have you addressed those notes yet?
Yeah. So how that happens these days. I actually have been writing long enough to remember when this was all on paper. Now you get track changes on your document, and in Usborne always have 2 people look at it, a senior and a junior editor. So you got 2 sets of marks and the comments, and then you get a very fulsome covering letter, which kind of gives it sort of more as a thematic organization to what their comments are about. A very full treatment. And it was quite funny because my new editor, Rebecca, she was sort of saying, if you want to call after Easter to sort of talk these through. I said, no, I was going to knock these off. I think you're right. Some of the comments actually were things which I found made me feel a bit geriatric. So there were some sensitivities now about descriptors and things. I'd left off the page any kind of ethnic descriptors because I know they're... Right. But apparently I hadn't sort of really cottoned onto the fact that you can't mention for children's books for child characters weight anymore. I didn't get that. Okay. So there's certain things where they help me sort of update myself.
Okay.
Because they were not necessary, and I can see why. And there was sort of we changed something about the background of the main character just to get away from some negative stereotypes. So that's also good, because you come carrying in my case, I live in Oxfordshire and I'm, the age I am. And so I've got a whole set of baggage, which I don't even know I'm carrying. And that's one of the jobs of younger people in the editorial team, is they're closer to the sort of the libraries, the teachers, the kids who are reading the stuff. Or at least where the market is. I don't suppose the kids don't know that much, but where the market is. So there was one comment, for example, I had an insult in it where somebody called somebody else a pillock, which is a very mild English sort of you ridiculous person. But there was a little mark saying, oh, this would put people off using it as a class reader.
Oh.
So why don't
Interesting.
Why don't you use it something, because maybe they think it's more rude than it is. It's not rude.
Yeah.
So we went for a different one that doesn't raise the same issue. So even though something like that, which I was not using anything anywhere close to anything sweary, but still it was in that sort of, I can't say that.
That's interesting. Okay, so marketing wise, right? So that means that your editor is looking at this as not just a book that people are going to pick up at Waterstones, like a parent, because it's with middle grade and below, it's really the gatekeeper. So it's the librarians, it's the parents that are buying these books for the kids. So they're looking at what the gatekeepers might think of a term like that, and so they're seeing it as something that could be used in school as a book to read in school, rather than just saying, I'm just putting this on the shelf at a local bookstore. It sounds like they have a broader view that they would like this to have a broader appeal. And so that's why they're making these kind of fine-tuned edits. And that seems very helpful to position you as best as possible. And I'm assuming that they'll also be putting marketing funds behind there if they're to suggest that this in either like placing reviews or interviews at different things to say like, okay, this is a book that would be good for a school reader sort of
boys
thing.
And girls at school. And it can be read out aloud in a class without offending anyone, or
right.
So you don't want to make it too anodyne, of course. So my main character does sort of have her own. It's not so much swear words as like curse words or exclamations. So I've given bit like an ent might say root and twig. Those equivalent. So I had fun inventing things that she could say.
Okay.
Just sort of fun things to make you giggle, but not to make you feel, oh, that's naughty. So you can sort of inject the energy. I think it's all about the energy in the text. You can inject the energy. You don't have to shock. You can use, in this innocent world I'm creating, that it has those elements which hopefully kids will find fun. So we'll dip back into this later, because the next stage will be I'll tell you about working with illustrators and maps and those kind of things, which are standard, like absolute core fantasy fun things to do. In terms of the level of fantasy in this, it's a kind of alternative world to our real world. So it doesn't have magic, it's just got a sort of extension of the steam age into the 20th century. So the technology is worked out to be different. And there's an element of more sentience in animals than there is in the real world. Unless you've got a very well-trained dog. But you know what I mean? There's an element of slight fantasy sprinkle without going straight over into a sort of a magic economy or anything like that.
Right.
So it has a make-believe element to it without being elves and orcs. Yeah. Okay.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So right now, it's
I haven't got an official title for it yet. So it is the Junior Golding Project. I will announce the name and
Untitled
stuff next time.
Okay, great. Yeah. So right now so you've worked with your editors, and like your edits to the text, those are all in, and now you're moving.
Very light touch from here onwards. It will be like the fine tuning of how it was set on the page and the those sorts sorts of things. The line edit, if there's anything needed doing on that front, but we've probably already done that more or less. Great.
Looking forward to hearing more about it.
Yeah, thank you for your time, Jacob.
You're welcome. Happy to talk with you.
Thanks for listening to Mythmakers podcast, brought to you by the Oxford Centre for Fantasy. Visit oxfordcenterforfantasy.org to join in the fun. Find out about our online courses, in-person stays in Oxford, plus visit our shop for great gifts. Tell a friend and subscribe wherever you find your favourite podcasts worldwide.
If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Because as your life changes and your body changes, Sleep Number mattresses adapt and shift to give you personalized comfort night after night. And now it's the final days of our Everything's on Sale event. Save up to $1,200 on mattresses. Our Memorial Day event ends Monday. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.